Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail, where you can in turn inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. I am your running host, Dean Thompson. Have you ever said, "I'm giving God the glory"? Well, the story today may pique your interest a bit. And then I'm going to share an experience I had just this past week. And to talk about it with me is Run for God founder Mitchell Hollis.
Thanks for having me, Dean. Hey, so I saw this post on Facebook. I don't normally talk about posts, but this one I really like because I'm an old Michael Jordan fan. You may have seen this, but I'm reading it right here. It says, a news reporter asked Michael Jordan if he thought the 90s Bulls could beat the LeBron Lakers of today. Michael Jordan said yes. The reporter said, well, by how much? He said, well, 2 or 3 points. And the reporter said, why such a close game? Michael Jordan said, well, most of us are in our 60s now. I'm an old Michael Jordan fan, so I just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Everybody needed to hear that today.
Absolutely. And that's a good one. I like it. I too. I still think Michael Jordan's the greatest basketball player ever lived.
He's where the GOAT came from.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So,
for sure. We're going to talk about another GOAT here in just a minute.
Yeah.
In a whole different thing, but.
So, hey, before we move any further, let's talk about this week's sponsor. This week's sponsor is Secure Mac. You've heard us talk on here before about them. They are the makers of the popular security system MacScan 3. This software protects your computer from threats targeting Macs, which are malware, keystroke loggers, and stalkerware. People nowadays are storing more and more information on their Macs, which provides an ever-growing target for hackers. Secure Mac has been educating users about security and privacy for over 20 years now. They even have a podcast to inform users on how to protect themselves online, and they can explain it to everyone so that they can understand. Visit securemac.com to get today. And isn't that the truth? I mean, it seems like I don't hardly open anything now unless I'm 100% sure.
That's true.
And I don't click on anything on Facebook unless I'm 100% sure that I know the person who's posting it. Because, man, it just seems like every day you're seeing somebody you know says, don't accept a friend request, I've been hacked. Or you're getting emails from people and they're saying, don't accept emails from me. It seems like it's just rampant nowadays. So everybody needs to be secured.
For sure. Yep. Well, this past week's post is actually, this one is the first one that I'm going to share from Run Club Social.
Yep. No more Facebook post.
Yep.
Run Club Social post you're going to be talking about now.
And there's still some folks posting on Facebook, but a lot of folks on the new Run Club Social page. And this one was just really simple. And I love this. It's a quote, and I love this quote. And this guy is big on quotes. Mm-hmm. And he says, never be afraid to try something new. Remember, amateurs built the Ark. Professionals built the Titanic. That comes from Jerry Snyder. He put a picture in there, and Jerry Snyder, of course, he's funny. He's shared several stories with us, and he just wants people to smile. Yeah. And I think it's so awesome to see somebody like that just wants people to smile. He looks a little like Santa Claus, maybe a little skinnier than Santa Claus.
I think he's getting ready for No Shave November in July, kind of like I did.
Sure looks like it. Yeah,
I want to have a beard like Jerry one day.
Yeah. Yeah. So this idea that that you got to be proficient at something before you can try it is just crazy.
Right.
It's good to just go out there and try new stuff.
Yeah,
I do it all the time. I'm still trying new stuff. I just tried this past week, had a race, and I tried this new mouthpiece that's supposed to help you breathe better. Now, it drove me crazy during that race.
But did it work?
I don't know. I ran really well.
I know the other day when I talked to you and you just got done with the run, you said it kind of got on your nerves a little bit. But,
yeah. Jury's still out. I'm gonna use it a little bit more, see what I think, but I'm willing to try new stuff. And you know, as old as I am, and as many times as I've gone out to run, if I'm still willing to try new things, then anybody ought to be willing.
So I
to
think
try
that's
new
where
things.
you and I differ. Is man, I'm just a creature of habit. Give it to me the same way you gave it to me yesterday, and the day before, and the day before, and the day before. So
yeah,
I'm a little different in that way.
There are some things I like as a constant, but I really think that that's part of the reason why, as I have slowed down a lot less than a lot of my counterparts have.
That's for sure.
As I get older. And I think part of that is because I'm willing to do and try new and different things and they're stuck in their old habits, doing their old things, and it doesn't work the same. Our body doesn't work the same. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't try new things and different things, you never discover the things that work well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sure.
Trivia question from last week was this. Jesse Owens ran in the Big Ten Track and Field Championships on May 25th, 1935. He did something there that will, in all likelihood, never be matched again. What was his amazing achievement on that day? Did you know the answer to this?
I don't know.
Well, they call it the greatest 45 minutes in sport.
I may know.
He tied one record and broke 3 world records in 45 minutes.
And those records were
the 100-yard dash,
mm-hmm.
the 220-yard dash, the 220-yard low hurdles, which is an event we don't see.
Was the last one long jump?
And the last one was long jump.
Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah. In 45 minutes, I mean, you will not find a single track meet anywhere.
I want to say we've talked about this. We have talked about this because you talk about how nowadays people say they can't, you can't peak twice in a day.
Yeah.
And how, just look to Jesse Owens. He peaked 4 times in a day,
In 45 minutes.
In 45 minutes. Yeah. Nowadays it's like you got to have 12 hours between events and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesse Owens proved all that wrong.
Yeah, definitely. One of the greatest athletes of all time. Of course, he also won 4 gold medals in the 1936 Olympics, and that was an interesting
Was it those
Olympics.
same 4 events?
No. Oh. It was, it was very similar, though. Instead of the 220 hurdles, it was the 100-meter dash, the 200-meter dash, the long jump, and the 4x100 relay. So,
and nowadays, athletes wouldn't even attempt that. They would pull out of something because of that. But it wasn't optimal, but he said, hey, the way the schedule works out, so I'm going to do it.
Well, something I didn't know until when I was researching this is that he actually didn't want to run the 4x100 meter relay. That there were, and they had others that were set to run the 4x100 meter relay, and they talked him into it. So I never knew that before looking at this. So
it kind of makes you wonder, like we've talked on here about Sydney McLaughlin before. Is it McLaughlin? Is that right? Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
So she runs the 4x4 and they dominated that. But her split would have been, what was it, 7th?
Yeah.
In the open 400?
Well, her split in the 400 meter hurdles would have been 7th in the open 400.
That's what it was. Yeah. But why doesn't she run the 400 open? Is it because of this type of thing where she doesn't want to try to put too much in a day? Is that part of the reason, or?
I don't know.
Because she could obviously do very well in the 400 open.
I love Sydney.
Yeah.
But I don't like the way she only runs a couple of track meets a year.
Yeah.
I don't think it's good for the sport. I think the sport needs to have I think Mo is the same way. She only runs a handful of events every year. And I think the sport needs for the great athletes to run all the meets. Not all the meets, but you know what I mean. We ought to be able to see them regularly. And, there's a lot of guys that do that. And Jakob Ingebrigtsen, he's one that, he's a big name now. He's not afraid of doing anything. He'll go and he'll run meets days apart. And he's the best in the world.
Yeah, but you got to also, we don't want to throw too much mud because it may be family, it may be priorities. Good Lord, she may have her priorities where they need to be. For all we know, it might be, I don't know. I'm just...
Well, I think, though, here's and there is a balance. I totally agree with you that there's a balance. But the sport is giving so much to her. The sport made her
That's true.
Who she is. Yeah. God made her who she is, but you know what I mean.
Right.
The sport has
Put her on the
made,
platform.
that's right, gave her a big platform, and I think she owes something to the sport.
Yeah.
And so, again, it may be that this year things worked out in a certain way that, there were lots of reasons, and maybe next year we'll see a lot more of her. And you just don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
She's a great runner.
She is a great runner. And Jesse Owens was a great runner. He was born in Oakville, Alabama, which is where our Dalton State, we run our conference championship every year in Oakville, Alabama.
Really?
Yes, where they have another race earlier in the year called the Jesse Owens Classic.
Wow.
Because they moved to Cleveland when he was 9, because growing up in the South at that time was not ideal as a black man. Yeah. And so they moved up to Cleveland, where there were some more opportunities. What's interesting, I didn't know this until I researched this either. He was known as JC, the letters, JC. Now, I guess that was his name, JC. And so when he moved to Cleveland and they asked him his name, and he told his teacher his name was JC, his thick Southern accent sounded like he was saying Jesse. And so,
really?
And so they started calling him Jesse, and that name just stuck.
So it stuck.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. And so he had a coach in junior high that was very understanding of the fact that Jesse needed to work while he was in school. So junior high, he's working. Different world back then. Mm-hmm. And so he worked after school. So the coach would allow him to do his workouts in the morning before school. And Jesse was very driven, obviously, from the time, from when he was young. He met his wife, Minnie, in junior high as well. And they were married for life.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
You don't hear that too often. And of course, he first became known. His name first became really big when they had what they called a high school national championship. And he tied the world record in the 100-yard dash at the high school national championship.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wait a minute, say that again. He tied what?
The world record.
Oh, not for high school.
No.
The world record.
Yes.
Wow.
The world record. Yes.
That's pretty amazing.
It was. He won 8 NCAA championships in 1935 and 36. Here's the saddest part, though. And of course, you have to realize it was a different time, and we're not here to talk politics, but he wasn't on scholarship because they didn't give scholarships to black athletes at that time. And so he had to work through college to pay for his college, which was crazy. When they traveled, all the segregation stuff was still around back then. And yet he overcame all of that to do the amazing things that he did. That 1935 Big Ten Championships was in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So he ran 9.4 in the 100-yard dash, which tied the world record. Then he did the long jump and jumped 26.8 and a quarter. That world record lasted 25 years from that point. And then in the 220-yard dash, he ran 20.3 seconds. And then in the 220 low hurdles, he ran 22.6. He was the first person to ever break 23 seconds in that event. And what's even more interesting is that he probably along the way, had they had a line and timed the 200-meter dash and hurdles, he probably would have set world records in those events as well. And then, of course, Jesse Owens goes to the 1936 Olympics, and it's famous what happened in the 1936 Olympics with Hitler and his racist views. And, they tried to talk Jesse out of going to the Olympics because the black community was saying, you don't want to be on their platform. And in hindsight, what Jesse did was the greatest thing he could have done, was to kind of thumb his nose at all of that. But even with that, he won gold in the 100-meter, the 200-meter, the long jump, and the 4x1. Of course, if you know your history also, in 1984, Carl Lewis did the exact same thing, won the exact same events. And so Carl Lewis, another one of the greatest. We've talked about him before. Another thing that happened in these Olympics is this was at the time when Adidas was just trying to get started. Adi Dassler, the guy who started Adidas, actually pulled Jesse aside when Jesse first got to Germany and said, "Hey, I got some shoes I want you to wear." He was the first black athlete to be sponsored by a shoe company, and it was Adidas. Yeah.
Wow.
So kudos to Adi Dassler for getting that. And then, so Hitler was accused of failing to acknowledge Jesse while he was there, right? Didn't shake his hand or anything like that. But here's what Jesse said when Jesse was confronted with that. Said, now, he didn't acknowledge you or anything like that. What do you think about that? And this was his quote. Hitler had a certain time to come to the stadium and a certain time to leave. It happened he had to leave before the victory ceremony after the 100 meters. But before he left, I was on my way to a broadcast and passed near his box. He waved at me and I waved back. I think it was bad taste to criticize the man of the hour in another country. I mean, that was
class right there.
Class,
yeah.
Absolute class. Yep. And then this was in an article, August 4th, 1936, African-American newspaper editor Robert L. Vann described witnessing Hitler salute Owens for having won the gold medal in a 100-meter sprint. He said, "And then, wonder of wonders, I saw Herr Adolf Hitler salute this lad. I looked on with a heart which beat proudly as the lad who was crowned king of the 100 meters event get an ovation the like of which I have never seen before. I saw Jesse Owens greeted by the Grand Chancellor of this country as a brilliant sun peeped out through the clouds. I saw a vast crowd of some 85,000 or 90,000 people stand up and cheer him to the echo." Really a cool moment. Really a cool moment. And it wouldn't have happened if he would have listened to the people that didn't want him to go.
Yeah. There's a lot to learn from that guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. He and Jackie Robinson, I think, in their sports did a lot.
They were different
for race relations, for sure. Yeah. But this was interesting. When he came back to the United States, there was a big reception for Jesse Owens, and somebody stuck a bag in his hand. Just, here, take this. And Jesse didn't pay much attention to it. And he kind of set it down to the side. And later on, he remembered, I need to get that bag. He picks this bag up, and somebody had handed him $10,000 in cash in a paper bag. He doesn't know who it was, but somebody handed him $10,000 in cash. Just knowing that he could use it and needed it, and
that's a lot of money today, but that was a whole lot of money back then.
Yes, it was, and I wish we knew who that person was.
Yeah,
I mean, that person deserves to be recognized for doing such an unselfish and awesome thing. I think that was pretty cool. And then this was the saddest thing. I think I didn't know this about. Roosevelt never invited Jesse Owens to the White House. Really? And that is so sad. I just can't imagine that happening today. Somebody not in those circumstances. And this was, I love this quote. Owens was quoted saying that this was his secret behind how fast he could run. He said, "I let my feet spend as little time on the ground as possible. From the air, fast down, and from the ground, fast up." So
keeps it simple.
Yeah. And then, of course, after the Olympics, again, kind of sad. He handled things with grace his whole life. He did get involved politically in some things on occasion, but what he did was he decided to pass up going to Europe to some track meets and stay in our country and scoop up some sponsorship deals. And then they took his amateur status away from him because he was getting paid to endorse some products. And so he was not able to participate in those track meets anymore, which was a really sad thing.
When did they take away the amateur status from the Olympics?
In the 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. It was much later. And then crazy thing, and this tells you how different the world is, he was a smoker from the age of 32. He started smoking, and he died of lung cancer at the age of 66. from being a smoker. And so he had, like I said, he had a lot of ups and downs. He could have been really bitter, but he usually made the most of his opportunities. I can't imagine. Can you imagine how celebrated he would be today if he were alive today doing what he did? Well, I mean, you don't have to imagine it because you could see what Carl Lewis, how celebrated he was.
Yeah.
And that was in the 80s.
Yeah.
Today, race relations are even better. I can't imagine. I mean, he would be held up as just a hero. But that 45 minutes in the Big Ten Championships in 1935 was the most amazing hour of athletics in my estimation ever.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, well let's talk about the new website for just a second.
Yeah.
It's out. People are signing up. It's growing. It's now some of you have not come over yet. Mm-hmm. We have quite a few people who are still on the old system that I don't know if they're not running right now. I don't know what's going on, but they're just kind of sitting on the old system, not doing anything. Get on there and come on over. Get signed up. It's a couple steps. Another email went out just this morning to all those who haven't made the trip over yet to the new website. But it's incredible, and probably by the time this podcast airs, we will have a 5K challenge that's going to start mid-September, and it's going to be a 5K challenge, kind of a community-wide event, so anybody can jump in, and it'll be getting you ready for those Jingle Bell runs. A lot of communities have these Jingle Bell runs mid-December. You may have to adjust the end, a week forward or a week back, depending on your race. But we know that a lot of people love to get in the Christmas spirit and go out and run a 5K, the Jingle Bell run. So this is going to be your class. So you might want to grab some people and get some people you don't even know, get ready for that. It's a great time of year. It's a great time of the year to spread the gospel.
Yeah.
Because it's on everybody's mind. It's the reason for the season. It's my favorite time of the year. My cheesy decorations will be up. And, I just love that time of year. So that's the reason we're putting this 5K challenge together, so that you can bring some people along who may have never run and finish it. Because usually at those events, no matter where you go to one in the country, they're awesome.
Yeah,
they're just fun. Mm-hmm. And and also by the time this podcast comes out, we should have the whole instructor's dashboard up and running. We said we were going to get the site launched and then focus on that and finish that part up. We should have that done as well. So we're constantly adding new things to the website. It's robust. It's fun. It's the Run Club Social is just taken off and exploded. So if you're not there, go to runforgod.com and get logged in and join us.
Yeah. What are you waiting for? Get busy.
As a mom, I want to make sure we choose a cereal that's not entirely derived from sugar. Their car seats have to be nationally CPS certified, and their first car has to have every possible safety feature known to man. I just want to do my best to make sure that they're safe. One thing I don't have to worry about is the content they hear on J Radio. Not only do they love the music, but I know it's only going to be a positive message that I would approve of. Now, if I could just figure out how to get my youngest from sticking everything up his nose.
Sign up at jradio.com and download the new J Radio app in your app store.
All right, we're back, and we've had a few people share their story on the new site. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that, and I'm sure there will be more. If whatever your story is, as we always say, we want to hear your story. We're going to share another story here, and it's a great story, and you've got one too. So don't be afraid to get on there. We make it pretty easy. It kind of walk you through the whole thing, the whole process. So make sure you go on there, share your story. Somebody needs to hear it. Somebody's been in the same boat as you and needs to be encouraged by your story. So get out there and share your story. All right. How important do you think the long run is?
It's the most important.
You think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons.
I agree with you.
Mine obviously is probably a different reason than yours, but my reason is it's pushing the boundary of what people say they can do. Yeah. If you can run long, then the harder workouts prescribed during the week become more manageable, because when people think of running, they think of distance. Yeah. And 3 miles, 13 miles, 26 miles. I can't do that. Well, to me, the long run, now we can argue about tempo run too, but for new runners especially, I think the long run is
going longer,
hands down.
Yeah, mentally as well as physically.
It's that overcoming. You're overcoming the biggest barrier, I think, for people who have never run.
Yeah,
and it's distance.
Well, I think that I think it's individualized. I think there are some people who could never do a long run and do well. And then there's other people who really need the long run. And I think it's so individualized. People always point to, when people talk about the long run, there was a guy named Peter Snell who was an Olympic champion in 800 meters and was famous for going out and doing 22-mile runs as an 800-meter runner. Mm-hmm. Well, today's 800-meter runners don't run 22-mile runs. But that's what he did. And I guess one of the reasons I bring this up is for this reason. Most 800-meter runners shouldn't do what Peter Snell did. It worked for him. Don't think that just because one thing works for one person, you should do that thing, because it may or may not be what you should do. Now, I mentioned at the top of the podcast that I like to try new things, and I do. Trying new things is great, but pay attention to whether or not it's beneficial or not. Yeah. And don't do the things that aren't beneficial. Do the things that are beneficial, because I think that's important. Well, have you ever made the comment that you were doing something for God's glory? I'd say many of us have. And this next story may make you think about it a little bit closer when you make that statement. This one comes from Lisa Heyer. Many of you, she's been on this podcast before.
That's just down the road.
That's right.
She's got the big dog.
Yeah, that's right. This one's called Give God the Glory Redemption Story. I was excited to do my first Peachtree Road Race on July 4th, 2022. This race began in 1970. It had 150 participants, with 110 of them finishing the 6.2-mile race. 2019 marked the 50th running of what has become the world's largest 10K per the Atlanta Track Club, which sponsors and supports this event. In 1970, Jeff Galloway was the first man to cross the finish line, and in 2022, on my first Peachtree Road Race event, I was fortunate enough to meet this extremely gentle and kind man. You should look him up. He has a wealth of knowledge and training plans for all skill levels. So, I was more than excited to participate in the race, meet Jeff Galloway, the first winner of the Peachtree Road Race, and to meet Abdi Abdirahman, which is an American long-distance runner. He is a 5-time Olympian competing for the United States in the 10,000 meters and the marathon. He still competes on an elite level, even though he is in his mid-40s. And that was just part of the excitement. My husband and I arrived at the race bright and early on July 4th with approximately 50,000 other participants. We met a very nice man who was doing his 50th Peachtree Road Race and was 87 years old. He told many interesting stories about the event from the past and present, and he told us what to look for and how to enjoy this race. He was just one of the many interesting people I would meet and see that day. I was loving it all. This is my event go-to for fun and excitement. It was getting closer to start time. Oliver to move up on his corral, which is based on entry time, and I stayed back in mine, met some more interesting people, and checked in on Facebook at the Peachtree Road Race start area. I posted July 4th, 2022, let's get this run on. First Peachtree Road Race, to God be the glory, with some photos I had been taken. What an exciting morning to give God the glory. I moved up to my corral, and out of the 50,000 participants, I met up with one of my dear friends in her group. How in the world, with that many people, did I end up starting this race with someone I knew? I was going to run with her husband, and friends to make this an even better than expected race day. We lined up. It was our corral's time to start, and start we did. I felt great the 2 previous races. I completed a sprint triathlon the weekend before and completed a 5K race 2 days before with a good pace and no issues. But on this day, when I had stated, to God be the glory, I took 2 steps past the starting line and my knee stopped me instantly. pain. I was thinking, what is going on? It was a pain I hadn't felt before, and why now? I would walk and then try to run again, but it wasn't working without severe pain around my knee. I started praying, rubbing my knee and praying for God to heal me, help me, but it wasn't working. I continued to walk for 3+ miles and began to listen to God speaking to me through the Holy Spirit. God was asking me, how was I glorifying Him, as I had stated on the post? Did I really want to glorify Him, or do the race and talk about glorifying Him? How was I glorifying Him in this at all? God blessed me with 6.2 miles of walking, skipping, and jogging, but mostly by Him walking with me, opening my heart to search my desires and to show me just wearing my pink Run for God hat while I run doesn't glorify Him. Once again, my race day was becoming about me running my race, not the race God set out for me to run. I wanted Him to fix me so I could run the race, but He did better. He fixed my eyes on Him and how I needed to work on my heart, not my run in this race. So when I said, "To God be the glory," God showed up, opened my heart, walked and talked with me, and showed me the way. Not my ways, but His. And not only that, but God also threw in some humor. And I finished the race with Jesus. Not the real Jesus, but a man that suddenly came out of nowhere and ran up beside me and then in front of me to finish the race. He was dressed like Jesus would have dressed, and he was carrying a cross while he ran. So someone behind me said, "Who is that? Is that Jesus?" I said, "Yes." And we all needed some Jesus about that time. God can make an event a real adventure with great stories, memories, and wisdom along the path. His ways are so much better. And God always has a redemption opportunity to be redeemed. In 2 weeks from the Peachtree Road Race, I was signed up for the Run for God Hawkins 10K fundraiser, which I now call the Run for God Hawkins 10K Redemption Run. The 2 weeks between Peachtree Road Race and Run for God Hawkins 10K, I was not able to run at all. I would try, but the pain was still there and strong when I tried. I iced it, rested it, and showed up at the Run for God race on July 16th, anticipating a 5K, 10K walk, or just standing at the start-finish line to cheer others. But God had a different plan, a redemption plan. As I was running, anticipating pain, but not having any, God said, "This is your redemption run." Redemption is defined as the act of saving or being saved from sin, error, or evil. I was not being evil or intentionally sinful, but I was in error when I stated it was to glorify God at the Peachtree Road Race. But now, only by the grace and mercy of God was I able not to walk, but to run the race set out before me with no pain. Even my left hip, that always bothers me, was released on this day. In this redemption run, God spoke, and He reminded me where my strength comes from. To God be the glory for real. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, "But He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." Ephesians 2:8-9 says, "For it is by grace you have been saved, though not of faith, that and this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." You just can't make that up about finishing with Jesus there, can you?
No, and I think we need to give Lisa a shout out. She also put her website on here. You know, Lisa's done some pretty cool stuff. You can go visit her at lisaheyer.com.
Yeah.
That's HEYER.com. I got on there this morning and looked around. She's got a really cool site.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I can't help but think the whole time you're reading this about Chapter 9 in the 5K challenge, or Chapter 9 in all of the challenges.
Yeah.
Where we talk about the T-shirt.
Yeah.
And we talk about the dangers of wearing the T-shirt and your motives not being right. And that sounds bad when I say it, but we all struggle with it. We all deal with exactly what Lisa is saying here. I try to make it a point, and this may sound bad, I don't know. I try to make it a point not to tell somebody I'm going to pray for them unless I'm 1,000%. If I say I'm going to pray for you, there's a rock right here behind me. But so many times, and I have done it, we say, "Oh, I'll pray for you," and we never give it another thought.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous. It really is dangerous, for a lot of reasons. But also, we talk about with the T-shirt. In chapter 9, we say, the T-shirt can be a great witnessing tool, but it can also do damage. If you're wearing it and you're acting ways, you're not living out by example the way that we say you're to live out. If you're not doing that and you're wearing that T-shirt, I've talked about a guy that used to be in my triathlon world. He was the dad of one of the kids, and man, this guy had a mouth on him, but he was an incredibly great guy. You may remember the guy I'm talking about. You may not. Just a great guy, but man, he was a cusser of the worst degree. And he said, "Mitchell, when are you gonna bring me one of those blankety blank T-shirts?" And I brought him one, but it really convicted me when I gave them to him. The disconnect.
Yeah.
He is a very extreme example of what we all do sometimes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Jesus fish on your bumper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going up and down Cleveland Highway, you're going to be tested.
Yep.
And so I think it's just to her, this whole story is, I give God all the glory.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you? We've got to think about that. We really need to check ourselves when we make those statements. I'll pray for you. To God be the glory. Wearing the Run for God shirts. We've really got to look inside of our own heart and say, are we backing up what's being said or what we're wearing here?
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I love this story.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm guilty of, I don't like to run a race without my Run for God singlet on. The thing's about worn out now. The places where I put pins through it, they're all these. It's looking pretty ragged.
I know a place you can get another one.
Do you really? Yeah. Do you really? Yeah.
We'll see about that.
Yeah. Anyway, I love it, and I try to. There's only one race I run every year that I can't wear it, and but I make sure that when I'm warming up and cooling down, I've got a Run for God T-shirt on over the top of it. So, but it's but yeah, it's important. But I'm going to share a story here in a little bit, and I'm gonna talk about that. But I'm very cognizant of that. So you got the opposite thing too with a Run for God T-shirt, right? You have to realize that people are going to scrutinize you a little bit heavier and that kind of thing. But at the same time, wearing that also is a reminder while you're wearing it too. So it's an encouragement as well. So yeah, it comes with responsibility, but it also comes with some encouragement. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
2 Corinthians 12:9, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me.
We talk about this so much on here, but it really stands out in this verse. When is God's power made perfect?
Yeah, when we're at
our weakness.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you say you're talking about you have trouble with this, and I do too. Because we want to be strong. We want to, but we have to learn the strength and weakness, and that is so hard, especially for guys like me and you who we're proud of the things we've done. We're goal driven. We're goal oriented, but you've got to set all that aside when it comes to God. Yeah.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think that it's interesting that God also wants us, he says if you don't work, you don't eat too.
Exactly.
So he wants us to.
So what gives?
To do things under our power as well. And I've always said, I really think that's the reason why I run as well as I do at my age is because I think I'm just stubborn and dumb. It's like, well, everybody else is slowing down, but that doesn't mean I should slow down.
Right. Yeah.
They're just making excuses. I'm trying to figure out ways not to. And, I guess what I'm saying is I try to ignore my weaknesses and try to overcome those things by just kind of ignoring them and putting them in the back of my mind. So there's that part. But then there's the part where we got to rely on God for our strength for so many things.
Yeah, and I think, weakness can come in many different forms. It can simply be humble. Society, we look at that as weakness. Is that what God's talking about there? Is he using weakness in a societal way? Is it you just need to be humble, and then I can my power can be made perfect. A lot of times it can be as simple as that, but how hard is that sometimes?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, a lot of conviction going on here, but sometimes it's as simple. I say it's as simple as just being humble in a moment, and maybe that moment is when you're being attacked.
Yeah.
I want to be anything but weakness, and I want to be anything but humble in those times. But sometimes that is the time that God can just speak the loudest, because we don't have to say anything. We don't. I mean, the Bible's even clear. Turn the other cheek. Let them hit you on the other side. Mm-hmm. My power will shine through, but golly bum is that. That's hard to do. It is hard, difficult. But it's worth it when you do it. And because there have been times, though not as many as there should, where God has really convicted my heart in the moment, and I've just stayed quiet.
Yeah.
And you look back and you're like, wow, that really does work.
Yeah.
But then the next thing comes around and you're like, all of a sudden you have amnesia and you forgot about that.
Yep.
But it's so true.
Yeah. And in this case, I'm sure that if you ask Lisa, and we know Lisa, she has a strong relationship with Christ.
Sure.
And so for her just to recognize this was kudos to her, right? For an area where if you asked her, she would tell you, yeah, it's really important that I'm strong in that area, that my relationship is strong. And at the same time, she was being convicted, and God was, she's tuned in to God to tell her that. And that's where a lot of times those moments where we do want to strike back is, promise you, if you get connected with God close enough in those moments, those feelings of wanting to strike back will diminish over time, to some degree. Now, they're never going to go away, because we're all human. We've all got our human nature. We've all got our sin nature. But God will make the intensity of wanting to strike back at somebody diminish over time. Mm-hmm. But you have to recognize it, just like she did here. Yep. Ephesians 2:8-9, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. We talk about that a lot. We can't do enough to save ourselves. No. You just can't do it. No matter how tough we may think we are, we have to have God to have eternal life. And the good news is the answer is really simple. Right.
Yeah, I think it's just so important to point out that works comes after faith. Works is still in the picture.
It is. Yeah.
Works is not what saves us. It's evidence that we are saved. And
living that lifestyle is not easy. It's not easy because of the things we were just talking about. When somebody does, there was just, how I am about stuff. I saw something, it was a political thing, and I just completely disagreed with it. I typed out an email, and then I erased the whole thing, because God was telling me
you are getting better in your old age.
God was telling me, don't do that, don't do that, and so I didn't. But so it is.
My wife tells me that I'll type the email and then wait 24 hours.
Yeah,
and usually the email doesn't get sent.
Yeah. But that's our human side, right? Our human side wants us to believe. And again, like I said, there are certain areas where when it comes to running, I need to do things under Dean's power for my running. And so we think that we should do that for everything, because that's the way we do it in one area of our life. And God's not going to do the running for us. Right. So we do have to do things, and that's what makes all of this so hard, is the wisdom of knowing when to and when not to. because we just automatically think in terms, because most things during the day that we have to get done, we have to do that under our power, and with God's help. And so when it comes to the point where we need to do it the other way around, it's not, doesn't feel natural to us, no. Right? And it's a lot like, when the Israelites were when Jesus shows up, the Israelites are like, the Bible was clear he was going to be a leader. Well, what leader did they know? They thought he should be a king. Mm-hmm. That's what leaders were in that day, and that's not what he was. And so they had a really hard time for that. I think it's a hard time understanding that it didn't make sense to them for Jesus to be who Jesus was. Mm-hmm. And that's why so many of them struggled with that. And I guess our frame of reference is to do things.
Sure.
And relying on God makes it hard.
And a lot of times we just need to stop.
Yeah.
And look around and do nothing.
Yeah.
But for many people, that's just not natural.
That's hard too.
And but we can do ourselves into a hole.
That's a good way to put it. 1 Corinthians 10:31. So whatever you eat or drink or whatever you do all for the glory of God. It's the remember the goal verse. I can't hear this verse anymore without thinking about that movie. I love that movie, and that movie did a really good job of explaining what that verse is and what it means and sharing the gospel. And so, if you haven't seen Remember the Goal, it's a running themed movie, and that's a great movie to talk about humbleness. When you think about humbleness and relying on God, and that's a good illustration of how to do it.
Talking about Remember the Goal, it's funny you said that or bring that up, because I just mentioned Dave Cristiano last week. I was coming home and I was telling, for those of you who listened to last week, we talked about, or 2 weeks ago, we talked about John Disterdick. And you and I did have lunch with him, and we're going to do a podcast with him here shortly. But I come home and I said, we need to pitch John's story to Dave Cristiano.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think Dave would really enjoy getting to meet him and getting to know him.
I'm sure he would. Yeah.
But I mean, it's this is a reminder that we need to have reminders around us all the time, whether it's our Run for God shirt or whether it's the WWJD, bracelets, or we need to consciously put things in our life to make us remember that whatever we do, whatever we say, wherever we go, however we act, we need to be doing it for God's glory. But it also makes me remember back to a devotion we had. I think it was in the first 5K challenge book. It was called Pancakes and Gravy. No, Pancakes and Waffles. And you can tell where my mind is. But it's the whole concept that so many times we take this verse and we say absolutely, and we put it over here in the church compartment.
Yeah.
Or we put it over here in the Run for God class compartment. But when we get over here to the work compartment, or we get over here to the social life compartment, God, we're gonna keep this verse over here. We're gonna keep your glory over here because it really just doesn't fit in over here. And it's like syrup going into a waffle. But how God calls us to live our lives, the way he tells us to live out 1 Corinthians 10:31 here, is like a pancake.
Yeah.
You pour that syrup on and it goes everywhere. Yeah. There's no place that's off limits, but we like to put limits.
Yeah.
We like to compartmentalize. We want a space. We make ourselves feel good by saying, well, half of my life, 3/4 of my life, I let God run all over. So I'm doing pretty good. No, you're not.
Yeah.
We're not. I shouldn't say you. We're not.
Right.
Because God wants it all. He wants his grace to flow over every area of our life. And think about how bad that sounds. We don't want God's grace in certain areas of our lives. How dumb does that sound?
Yeah.
But we do it every day.
We do. And for me, when you think about everything you do, what does it look like to give God my Tuesday afternoon 8-mile run? You know what I mean? It's like it's just an ordinary thing that I just do, and I check off a list, basically, right? And so what does that look like? And you think, well, that's not what but that is what he's talking about. It's very, very, very clear. But I remember somebody one time, I met this couple, and actually I didn't know the couple, but the lady said to the man, "You know him. He's the one that's smiling when he's running all the time." And it was such a compliment, but that's, and a lot of times I'm wearing a Run for God shirt when I'm running. And so those things are connected, right? And so that's one way that you don't even think about that it could be connected. And Question 1. Is what I am claiming to glorify God really glorifying him? I hope so. I guess we should have the confidence of Paul, I guess, when we're talking about glorifying God, but it's hard. It's hard. And I hope that people look at, I just mentioned that story about that couple that I met, and you hope that God looks down on Runner Dean and thinks, that's what you're glorifying me and what you're doing. But that's part of the whole works thing, right? Is that, how do I say this? When you have Christ in your life, you have this desire to want to do more and to want to make sure that you leave this positive impact, and you want to make sure that people feel good about what you're doing and how you're representing Christ, and glorifying God is the way that she puts it. So, but you can't do enough.
Yeah.
And that's the dichotomy. That's the hard part. But we should be doing all we can do. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I sitting here, I'm thinking about all the areas of our lives where we should be giving God the glory. But one that really kind of sneaks in on you, and you have to be careful, is your thoughts.
Yeah.
When you have that thought you shouldn't have, do you immediately go to God and say, God, take that away from me? Or do you let that thought go? And I mean, that's just another example of these areas we don't think about. Mm-hmm. And it's areas that sometimes we compartmentalize. God, I can't help what I think. Well, yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. And we need to have that same seriousness with all those compartments of our lives, and knock the walls down between them, and let God in every single area, because it's what's the word I'm trying to use? Golly bum, Dean, I'm having a senior moment here.
Yeah.
It not multiply, it's
exacerbates.
Yeah, exacerbate. Yeah. I mean, it gets better and better the more walls you knock down. It's not just you get more of God for that. It's like you get 3 times more God when you knock one wall down, and it just it goes on and on.
Snowballs.
Yeah. If you let him into every area of your life, it's so much better than the sum of the parts. I guess is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's true. And you got to let him into every area.
Yeah. Well, and the companion verse to this one to me is Proverbs 3:6, right? In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight.
Compound is the word I was looking for. Compounds.
Yeah. There you go. Well, that's the more we do, the better off we are.
Sure.
Is what you're saying. It makes sense. Another question: who and what benefits from my actions?
We'll never know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. That's why it's so important to do it all the time, because people are constantly watching us. No question about it.
Yeah.
But I think my answer to that question is a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of things benefit from us living our lives right with God.
That's yeah. I think that God wants us. God doesn't look at everything we do and go, whatever you do, make sure that he wants credit for the things that we do, but he also wants to see us get benefit from things too.
Sure.
And so it's real easy for people, especially outside of Christianity, to think that that it's a crazy thought to do things for God, but Whenever we do things that are good for us, and then we represent him well in the way that we do things, and we go back to the 1031 verse, this running while smiling, for example, that I was talking about with the Run for God t-shirt, that may make a difference in somebody's life. And it's just an ordinary thing, but I'm benefiting from it as well. Right. So it's not a zero-sum game of it's him or us. And you hope that people see the things that you do. Whenever I go out and I run a race, the race that I ran this past weekend, I'm wearing a Run for God singlet. I hope that people look at the idea that I run so hard and look at that as that's the way to live life, and that God gets credit for that, and not just me, but I get credit for it as well. So it goes together. We should strive to always do things right and well and along the lines that God would want us to do things, because people are looking for excuses to look at what we do. It asks who and what benefits from my actions. Well,
I think the idea is we shouldn't settle. So many times in our lives we settle, and the Bible is clear. It uses words like striving, perfecting. We're never going to make it when we're here. And so we need to be doing everything, whether it's running, whether it's walking, whether it's baking, whatever we do, we should do it for God's glory. But along with that, for God to get the maximum glory, we should do it the best.
Right. Yeah.
We should do it the best. And because you're never going to get to where you want to get in running. It's just true.
Yeah.
If you had what Dean wants, you would be in the Olympics next time around.
Yeah.
Well, until you get there, the work's not done.
That's right.
We have the goal of wanting to get to heaven, and the work's not done until we get there. The only difference is with the Olympics, sorry, Dean, you're not going to get there, but you're constantly striving toward that goal. And it's the same striving that Paul talks about.
Yeah.
Striving for what ahead, leaving what is behind. It's the whole idea that in order to do things for God's glory, to really do things for God's glory, we got to give it our best. And that doesn't mean the fastest.
Right.
That means if you're going to walk, you're doing it with vigor. You're doing it with excitement. You're not doing the, woe is me, I got to go out and walk. You're like, I get to do this today. I'm going to do this. It may not be fast. We're not talking speed and performance here. We're talking about it's an attitude that you have. If you I talk about this with Landon all the time out. He's doing the woodworking stuff now, and don't cut any corners. Yeah. I tell him all the time, if there's a piece of wood on something and you look at it and there's any thought in your mind, I just rip it off.
Yeah.
Rip it off and do it again.
Yeah.
Because one day Landon's testimony could be told through the pieces of work, and you don't want somebody to look at, it's kind of like how people look at our life. Well, he says he's a Christian, but golly bum, look at that beat up piece of wood he's got down there.
Yeah.
It all ties together.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was trying to head with that. Was because people are looking for reasons to look at us and to, as sad as it is, to say bad things. And when we do things the best we can do it every time,
it shines.
It does, and everybody benefits.
And let me say, it may not be the best on earth, but it's the best you had.
That's right.
And people see that.
That's right.
People see that.
That's right. Last question. How can we not make the same mistake again?
Wish I knew the answer to that question.
Yeah, boy, me too. I hate to say it, but being human means it's in our DNA to make the same mistake.
But that's no excuse.
That's no excuse.
It's no excuse. Right. And we're all guilty of that sometimes. That's why I don't like the phrase, well, I'm just a sinner saved by grace. No, technically you're not. We were sinners before Christ. We are washed by the blood of Christ now, but we keep making mistakes. But that doesn't say that you have to.
Yep.
In fact, This I get a little. It's our youth pastor here a while back asked the question to the kids: can you not sin? Yes. The answer to that question is yes. We can not sin. We choose to sin.
That's a hard question.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
It's because we've heard all the things. We're a sinner saved by grace, and we were sinners, and God saved us, but we're going to sin. God is. I mean, yes, we're going to sin, but that doesn't. It's not a mandate.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
That's right.
We can not sin, and that is so hard to hear because we're humans. We want to give ourselves some grace.
Yeah.
Well, God never told us to give ourselves grace. He'll give us grace. His grace is sufficient for us. But he also says, go and sin no more.
Yeah.
There was no but after that. There was no well if after that. He told people, go and sin no more.
And that woman caught in adultery probably sinned some more.
Sure.
But the point was, do your absolute best not to, right? And that's where I've talked about my anger before and how much better I am at that. And that's because God has worked on me, and he's made me just keeps chiseling away some of the rough edges, and I get better and better at it. But I'm not perfect at it either.
But the goal is to not be angry anymore.
That's right.
And
at all. At all.
And that's what I, you know how black and white I am.
Yeah.
And it's what I don't like about, Coley, one of our cross country coaches. It burns me up when he'll say, he'll be talking about what time, and he didn't yesterday. I noticed he didn't yesterday, and I was so proud of him. But in the past, Coley would say, we got to meet tomorrow, meet at the school between 5:45 and 6.
Yeah.
No, meet at 5:45 because he knows that. And I know Coley's heart.
Oh, yeah.
He's trying to give people grace and ahead of time.
For sure.
But we need those hard statements because that's the bar.
Yeah.
Go and sin no more. There's grace there if we do, but the bar is not some ambiguous 5:45 to 6. The bar is 5:45.
Yeah.
Jesus said, be there.
Yep.
And if you're not, I'm going to give you some grace. But I expect you to be here.
Yep.
And the bar is sin no more.
Yeah.
And how do we not make this mistake again of not sinning? Get close with God.
That's it.
Get close and stay close.
Amen.
Do you struggle with motivation to exercise? Are you looking for something that will challenge you and inspire and motivate you? The Run for God Run Club is just what you need to get off the couch and on your way to a fitter, healthier you. Stop trying to get into better shape and do it with the help and inspiration of thousands of others who are going through the same challenges you face. Whether you are participating in the Couch to Marathon Challenge or any of our other challenges, or you're just looking for a daily pick-me-up to get active, join the Run for God Run Club today. You can join for as little as 27 cents a day. So what are you waiting for? Get started today at runforgod.com.
All right, we're back. They had the Sotheby's. Is that the way you say it? I'm not even sure how you say that. The auction place.
Sotheby's?
Sotheby's? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's Sotheby's.
You're probably right. I don't know. You know me. I'm
Sotheby's.
Sotheby's.
You may be right. I don't know. I've always heard it as Sotheby's. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds weird now that we're saying it a lot.
Yeah. That auction place.
Yeah.
They've got a pair of Steve Prefontaine's Nike waffle racers that they're putting up for auction, and they expect it to bring between $150,000 to $250,000 for that pair of shoes. That would be pretty cool to own, wouldn't it?
You would think Nike would buy those.
Yeah, I bet Nike's got a pair, though.
Yeah.
They probably already have a pair.
Museum or whatever.
They probably have the first pair. You know
probably,
what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah. But But yeah, it's cool that they're selling a pair, and they're the green and yellow.
We've talked about how much would that waffle iron be worth if they could find it.
Yeah. But they never found it, right? So anyway, Nike now, they sign more elite runners than any company in the world. And Pre was the first one. And it started basically with this shoe, right? So it's pretty cool. It all started with the waffle racer.
For the people who aren't listening, for the people who are listening who may not know Pre's story, let's give them a little bit of history on. You're talking about the waffle racers. Explain the process, why they're called the waffle racers.
Well, his coach was trying to find a way.
Jack Bowerman.
Or Bill
Bowerman.
Bill Bowerman was trying to find a way to make running shoes better, and he felt like there was a way to make running shoes better for not just the track. They had spike shoes at the time, but and so he got to thinking about you need something on the bottom that has a little bit of a grip to it. And one day he's sitting in his kitchen and he looks over and he sees a waffle iron and he thinks, wait a minute, that's it. And so he literally used it. He literally poured rubber into that waffle maker and ruined the waffle maker to make the first pair of waffle shoes, a bottom for a pair of running shoes. And he began making these shoes one pair at a time.
Which is still loosely the design today.
It is.
If you look at the bottom of a pair of running shoes, it kind of looks like they've been in a waffle iron.
Yeah, a lot of them do. And it was interesting. And the waffle racer too. I don't know if you've ever seen a pair of the waffle racers. There's no arch in the waffle racers at all. Like the sole of them is actually cut out where the arch is, so that they can be as minimalist as possible. And anyway, this pair of shoes looked like they were worn pretty good bit too. So he probably had some decent mileage on those shoes as well. So that's pretty cool thing.
Yeah,
pretty cool thing. Would be neat to own. All right, it's a time for Dean's Thoughts. That's a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith, and talk about faith. We can put some faith in the running community, right? Not like we can with God, but it's a pretty good group. This one is called the Magnum Mile. There is a memorial 5K race in Chattanooga to remember a man named Cameron Bean who was struck by a car and died while out on a training run one day. He was a professional runner, and it sent shockwaves through the Chattanooga running community. One of the local running stores, Fast Break Athletics, puts on a high-quality race each year in his memory. It's called the Cam Run. I ran it for the first time this year and ran very well. So well, in fact, that I finished 12th overall. I wasn't anywhere near the professional athletes who were there, but my placing easily qualified me for the Magnum Mile. The Magnum Mile is a 1-mile race held on the same day, 12 hours later, on a local high school track. It is such a fast race that 2 years ago it produced the fastest ever mile run on Tennessee soil, 4:01. The top 25 finishers from the morning race qualify for the evening race. Finishing in the top half of that 25 meant that they placed me in the fast race. Now, I have placed last in races before, but this had potential to be brutal. Sure enough, when the gun went off, I tried to stay close to the pack, but by the end of the first lap, it was worse than I thought. I not only finished last, but I was also only 10 seconds or so away from being lapped. The fact that the oldest guy in the race beside me was over 20 years younger didn't console me much over those last 2 laps. I finished as best I could, and that's where the magic happened. I was embarrassed, and I was walking after passing the finish line. I wanted to get away from the crowd, but they wouldn't let me. One by one, many people came up to me and gave me a high five. They were saying encouraging words. I had more people remark about my Run for God shirt than I had ever had before. What was happening? As I began my cool down, one of the elite guys by the name of John jogged a lap with me. He spent that lap clearly trying to make me feel better about my race. And it worked. Not that I was wallowing in self-pity. Those days are over for me. But he took a couple of minutes to make an old guy feel really good about himself. There are many lessons from this experience. Perhaps the most important is the fact that things are almost never as bad as you make them out to be. Finishing over 30 seconds after the penultimate finisher in a short race seems pretty bad when you're the guy doing it. So many people there knew it wasn't good, but they went out of their way to make me feel better. In those times when you think everyone is looking at you and maybe they're looking down on you, or you think they're all saying things like he didn't belong in that race, the truth is that when you go way out of your comfort zone, people notice and they're impressed by you. The next time you feel like a fish out of water, remember that. Another lesson, one that I already knew but was blown away by the extent of the display, is how incredibly supportive the running community is. We expect it with Run for God folks, but this was just a general Chattanooga running community. The running community is one of the best, most positive communities to be a part of. All in all, I had reasons to be down. I could have looked at the fact that I was going to finish last as a terrible thing, but instead I chose to focus on how great it would be to be in the race where the first sub-4 minute mile was ever run in the state of Tennessee. I could have looked at the fact that my cross-country team was there watching and I had run a poor race. Instead, I chose to focus on giving them a good example of how to handle a disappointing race. I could have wallowed in self-pity that came from a bad race, but instead, I chose to focus on how many awesome people were at this event. The truth is that you can always look at things in a more positive light if you just look for it. Most of the time, you don't have to look very hard either. Just like a street light is obvious in darkness, the positive things around you will be obvious. But here's the thing. You have to pick your head up and notice. Two things can make you miss the light. You ignore it even when you can see it, or you keep your head down and eyes closed. Either way, you have to deliberately take action to miss it. Don't do that. Allow yourself to see the positive, and it will be all around you. God is described as light in the Bible over and over. Really, the only way you can miss him is by deliberately ignoring him or keeping your eyes closed. I hope you have found how great God can be in your life. If you've not seen that light, please go to runforgod.com/peace with God to learn how you can see it in abundance. Learn to look around and pick out the good things around you. We can spend a lot of time dwelling on the negative things, but we don't have to stay there. You get to run or walk today. There's a positive. Don't overlook it. Don't overlook it.
It's a great story, Dean. So you blew right by one thing that I want to give you some fist bumps on. Tell everybody what you ran that 5K in.
16:57 was my time for the 5K.
That's pretty incredible.
It was a 90th percentile in the age grade calculator. I think that's only my fourth race, I think, that I've run in the 90th percentile.
That's incredible outside of your age group. So kudos to you.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, it was a good day in the morning, and then in the evening, I had nothing left in my legs.
I wish I would known that was going on. I knew it was going on. You had told me that you were doing that race, but I didn't put the two and two together because I said last year for the Magnum Mile I was going to go this year, and I forgot all about it because because I've only seen pictures, but it's like there's a crowd around the trek, the first 4 lanes, and they leave the last 2 lanes open, so you're basically running in a wall of people.
Yes.
And that's got to be electrifying.
Yes. All down that last straightaway and into that first curve, it is just shoulder to shoulder people standing in the 3rd lane.
Yeah.
And you're just, I mean, they're right on top of you. It's
probably
really,
deafening.
really cool. Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. And like I said, by the time I got to the end of the second lap, I was so far behind the leaders that I couldn't even see them. And those people were just as loud for me. I mean, it was pretty cool.
I'm in the camp of people that you talked about. I'm impressed that you're even in the race. I mean, that's to beat. So somebody did break 4 in that race?
No, they didn't.
Okay.
They didn't.
Okay.
But
they were expected to.
They were shooting for that anyway, and they ran 4:03.
So last year's time was faster. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
They and it was actually a really good race. Apparently, I missed it, but
well, I saw some pictures. Evidently, 2 guys were shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, there was one guy that took the lead with 300 to go and looked like he was pulling away, and then the other.
They were right behind you. You should have.
I know, right? All I had to do was turn around.
I had to take that shot. You teed it up perfect.
Yeah. And then, of course, in this race, my athletes are saying, "We've never seen you run before."
Yeah.
And then I'm like, yeah, you still haven't seen me run.
What was your time?
It was 5:14.
Wow.
It's
And what is your age?
56.
Not many 56-year-olds can do that.
No, but
Just saying.
I was really my goal was 4:56. So
And you've still got sub
way off
fives
of
in you. It just wasn't that because you ran a 16:50 something that morning. So
yeah, well,
we're still going. I'm still hoping to see you do that. Continue that streak of sub fives for some. Have you decided when you're going to do that?
Well, my goal is to do it 45 years apart when it gets to that point. So
when is that?
That's a couple of years from now.
So you're not. Are you going to try it every year until then?
No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
I ran a race that was fairly close to an equivalent sub 5 in the 1,500 meters at the national championships, and there's no benefit if I haven't done it every year since I did it the first time. There's no benefit to doing it, and I would just be doing it just to do it.
So 45 years apart, will that be a record? Because I know you've looked into that.
As far as I know, the longest that I've seen has been 43 and a half years. So I'm at 42 years now. So 2 years from now, I'll be at 44 years, which is longer than I've seen anybody do it. Yeah. Now, there may be somebody out there who has, but I know at this point at 42 years, it's rarefied air. So I'm happy about that. So
yeah. Well, good job, Dean.
And honestly, this race, this one, and there's only one other race that I can think of that were as bad as this one, as far as just expectation versus result. And I know people look at that and they go, what are you talking about? You were only, 18 seconds away from what your expectation was. And I'm like, but I don't miss by 18 seconds. Yeah. I just don't do that, and especially in a mile. And so this was really, really, really bad. And so I remember a 10K I ran several years ago where I ran like 38 minutes, and my goal was 35, and that was kind of along these same lines. Still to this day, don't know what happened that day either. But even that race several years ago, I remember cooling down by myself. I remember just being miserable after it, and making one excuse after another. And this race was different. When I got through, I was looking for people to cool down with. I was, people were saying, great race. And I was just saying, thank you, rather than, no, that was abysmal, which is what I would have done years ago. God's really worked on me and helped me understand that it's, you can't dwell on those things, and there's no reason to. And God's given me a great gift, and I should be thankful for it.
Because the best way to shine what was on your singlet, was to be positive.
And
to be grateful and thanking people. But yeah, you see it. I've even had talks with my boys. They get done with the race and they're disappointed. It's so. And they don't see it because they're in the moment. But outside looking in, it's so distasteful to see people just go wallow in self-pity. And I understand it. I get it. You it's not human nature to want to be cheerful at that time.
Right.
But man, how much of a difference it makes to everybody else when you are cheerful.
Yeah.
And you don't take yourself too seriously. It's so much more refreshing to see that than to and I've done it and my kids have done it, and but it's hard in the moment to know. It's kind of like we talk about. You need to decide before the race starts how you're going to act after the race, no matter what.
Yeah.
And if you do, you're much more likely to do that. But yeah, kudos.
It's true. Yeah. Well, it was. I was amazed at how many people talked about my Run for God singlet, like more than ever before. And this was a relatively small crowd that was there. And I don't know if that was just God's way of kind of pointing out the positives to me or what was going on, but
it's his strength in your weakness.
Yeah.
You thought this was bad. It's horrible. I was weak here.
Yeah.
But God kind of gave you the wink there and said, people are noticing what they should be noticing here.
Yeah, and in a different way too. I can't. It's hard for me to explain. The way that people approached me about it was different. Like I hear all the time. You hear all the time. I like your shirt.
Like shirt,
yeah, I hear that all the time. But a couple of people, kind of looked me in the eye and said, you're doing a great job representing what God wants you to. Just trying to go out of their way to be extra positive.
But if you had got mad and walked off the track,
I wouldn't have heard it.
You wouldn't have heard it.
Yep.
And you wouldn't have made. Not only would you not have heard it, you wouldn't have made the impact.
That's right.
The impact would have gone lost. It would have been a wasted opportunity.
Yep.
So, let me ask you this: did you? Because I just have to. I feel like that 18 seconds or whatever it was that you were off what you want to do. How much of that was because of 1650 something 12 hours earlier? It had to have come into effect.
Yeah, I think some of it did.
Did you calculate for any of that?
I didn't.
Okay.
No.
Well, to me,
I told you. I told you I'm a dumb runner. I just go out there thinking I can do anything. But honestly, I think what happened was...
Of course, we just talked about Jesse Owens at the beginning of this, so that kind of negates anything I'm saying. But I'm trying to give you a little bit of...
And I appreciate that.
Props here.
And several people did.
Yeah.
There was a lot of the conversation.
That had to... I think had you done the mile 1 hour later... I don't know. Maybe I'm talking about a turn here, but 12 hours, you start rigor mortis sets in and things tighten up.
Not when you're old. Not when you're old. You don't have time for it yet. It takes over a day to get sore. I really didn't feel bad.
Really?
My legs felt a little bit heavy, but that was it. I still thought, I actually, at the end of the first lap, I still thought I had a chance at it. But then at the end of the second lap, my split was so bad.
Reality set.
And what happened was I really did try to I was hanging on to the back of that pack for about 3/4 of that first lap. And I realized that the guy that I was running right behind was like a 420 miler. And, he'll run sub 5 for an 8K. And he's the guy he's the guy that qualified for the Olympic trials in the marathon. That's who I was behind. Okay. That's how fast he was. And he was the next to last guy. And that first lap was just too fast. And, I got, how
what was your first lap?
Once you get to breathing so hard, that it just can't come back from it. And I think that's what happened more than anything else.
So what was the first lap?
My first lap, the 409 meters was 70. So it was about a 68.5 for the first lap. And so that's, how fast that is. Yeah. That's, that's too fast.
Yeah.
I just, I ran a 800 here not too long ago, and I didn't run my laps that fast.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it's all good. And a lot of times what we have these weak moments and things start to hurt, and we just want to give up, and we just have to keep going even when things are hard. And, we like to make excuses, and that's why I don't want you to give me excuses, because I can use the excuse that I went out too hard, and I did. But that's my fault.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I should.
No, I'm not looking for excuses. I'm contemplating reasons.
Yeah, and
there's always reasons,
and I get it. But
none of them are good.
But how many athletes do we hear when they get through say, "Well, I didn't drink enough water today"?
Yeah.
No, that's not the reason.
Yeah. No.
That's not the reason.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
And so after the race, I wasn't talking about. Well, if I was going to talk about, I was going to say, I went out too fast. I made a mistake. I did something dumb.
Yeah.
And
take ownership.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what we have to do today.
So you blew it, Dean.
So
basically, that's what you want me to say.
That's exactly what happened. I did. Because my goal was and maybe my ambition was a little too high, just because my thoughts were where I finished at a 90th percentile in the morning race, and I wanted to do it again in the evening race, which would have meant I needed to run 4:56. That's why my goal was 4:56. And I knew it would be harder than the morning was. But in reality, I probably should have thought anything under 5 minutes would have been great. Mm-hmm. And if I'd have done that, I would have had a whole different approach to it. Yeah. Probably. And probably would have done better. So as it stood, Catherine finished second for females, which was cool because she won some cash, which was pretty cool. her and I ran the exact same time.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. We were in different races, but we ran the exact same time. They let her run with the guys.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
In the slower race. So yeah, it was pretty cool. They let her and the girl who won, they let them both run in the guys race so that they could be pushed, because they felt like if they were in a women's only race, they wouldn't get the opportunity to run with somebody. And so that was a pretty cool thing to do too. So,
very cool.
Yep. It was cool. I'm just glad that God has changed me and has allowed me to handle things in so much better way. And it's so much happier. It's so much, the drive home, we took a bus because a lot of the girls on the team went to run this too. And we took a bus, and the ride home wasn't bad. Normally, 10, 15 years ago, it would have been bad.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. And I've changed because God's changed me.
Yeah.
And so we talked about giving God the glory. God gets the credit for that one for sure.
Well, good job, Dean.
Thank you.
At Run for God, we care about more than just your exercise. We care about your relationship with God, and we believe that the music you listen to while you run can help you build your relationship with God. That's why we partner with J Radio. J Radio offers a variety of positive and Christian playlists to listen to while you run. You can find a playlist that I put together on the Run for God station on J Radio.
Back in, I mentioned that Catherine had won some cash. Now, understand that she's not allowed to accept that cash as an athlete, a college athlete, but she donates that cash. We checked and it is okay, so she donates that money back, actually to the program.
Yeah,
so it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
so
good deal.
Yeah. All right, every week I share a reason why running is so awesome. This week it's this: being a runner is like having a secret handshake. If you're not a runner, you don't understand what it's like, right? You don't understand why people like it. You don't understand how good it is for you. You don't understand how it will actually add energy to your life rather than sap it from you. But if you are a runner, you have a deeper understanding of a lot of things that sedentary people don't understand. And so I guess that means runners are smarter too.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like
walkers.
Yeah. So Jakob Ingebrigtsen, we mentioned earlier, he wants to triple at the World Championships. Now, what that means for those listening, that means he wants to run the 1,500, the 5K, and the 10K. He said he would have done it at the World Championships this year, but he got COVID. He was going to try to qualify for the 10K, but the race he was going to run to qualify was while he had COVID, so he couldn't run it. And that's the only reason he had to do it this year. So that would be amazing to watch somebody try to do that. That would be just incredible. And so he's talking about doing it. And it would be fun to watch for sure. They're going to have to change the schedule for that to work, though, because as it stands right now, the semifinals for the 1,500 is an hour before the 10K, and that's not gonna work. I wouldn't think so, but it'll be easy to change. So maybe they'll do that. So here's this weird story that's kind of loosely connected to running. There's a guy in Eugene, Oregon, Tracktown, USA. He's been running this resale shoe business since 2013. Now those are shoes that are, a lot of times they're specially made shoes. They take a regular pair, like a pair of Air Jordans, and they do something special to them to make them. And he does this. So he has sold $85 million worth of shoes that nobody received. So he said he had these shoes and charged people thousands of dollars for them, and then they never got sent out. And so obviously criminal organization, so they've decided that they're going to sell all the shoes that he's got in stock. He's got 60,000 pairs of shoes in stock right now, and they're going to sell it to try to pay back some of these people. Now they're never going to get $85 million out of them. They estimate they're worth about $15 million what he's got. And I understand greed, and I understand what motivates this kind of thing. But here's the reason that I bring all this up. This couldn't have happened if people didn't buy into this idea that he had something that it was very, very clear he could not have had. Mm-hmm. Like he was saying, I've got these shoes that haven't come out yet. I've got my hands on them before everybody else is going to. And you know it's not true. And so we do that as runners.
Sure.
We buy into, I've seen this advertisement on Facebook a number of times that says you can be a great runner on, 12 miles a week or whatever. Right. And it's just not true. There aren't shortcuts. It takes hard work and it takes some determination. And we need to quit buying into those things. We've all done it at one time or another. We've all bought something online or we've done something and we were very disappointed in it. I remember buying, I can't even remember what it was now. I remember buying something online that I never received. And, it wasn't something crazy expensive like this or anything like that. But if you want to be in great shape, you have to earn it. Mm-hmm. If you want to lose weight, you have to earn it. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. And it doesn't just come because somebody got their hands on something special or somebody has a secret. How many times have you seen these? They'll have commercials. There's a lady that's on late night TV these days who has this commercial who says, I used to put my money in a 401k and I decided there's a better way. And then she goes on for minutes and minutes and minutes telling that she's got this better way. And if you'll just give her some money, she'll tell you what that better way is, right? And there's not a better way. No. And just be careful buying into the easy way.
Simplicity is often the best. I mean, I was running with Litzy yesterday, one of the high school cross country. We talked about her on a podcast here a while back. She's just started running and I was walking backwards. I like to go backwards and high five everybody. Well, Litzy was by herself, so I said, I'm going to run a mile with you. So I turned around and started running with her, and she started talking about, she said, what paces are we supposed to be running? I mean, she's literally been running for just a matter of weeks. And this is one of those things we just assume everybody knows some of these things. She said, because I see some people, they're running faster. Should I be running? What pace should I be running right now? And I said, yesterday was an easy run. I said, you're supposed to run easy. And I said, there's the secret to getting fast is running long sometimes, running easy a lot of times, and running hard sometimes. And she said, oh, that makes sense. But even in the running community, we complicate things so much, and it really boils down to those three types of run. And so to your point, not to say that training plans don't have their place. Sure. We have training plans in Run for God Run Club. People need that. Mm-hmm. But they're not complicated. Yeah. And, don't let yourself fall into the trap of this thing, this plan, this whatever is going to make me faster. No, you're the answer to that equation.
That's it.
It's what you do and your attitude toward the sport is what's going to make you a better runner. Just like this secret thing is going to make me a better follower of Christ. No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. It's you. It's your relationship with Jesus Christ.
That's the bottom line. Well, ASICS did a study about what they call a state of mind index. Okay, so this is a measure of mental health, and they found that moving with any kind of form of exercise, you only have to do it 15 minutes and 9 seconds a day. Mm-hmm. Is what it takes. It's funny that we just talk about this, but this is being consistent and doing this consistently. And the mental health difference for people that move at least that long every day in some form of exercise is, again, it's on a scale of 0 to 100, was 68 for people who do exercise and 56 for those who were sedentary. That's in the context of this was a huge difference. And that's nothing new to us. We know that. But here's the thing that's really concerning that I thought was interesting about this whole study was that they showed that Gen Z people have a much lower what would I call it, state of mind index than older people do, and that our younger people are not exercising as much. Mm. And that it's causing problems with their state of mind. And so if you're out there and you're young, you need to be concerned about that. You need to get out there and get moving. That's why cross country is such a great sport for kids in high school, because it does get them to moving around and doing stuff. It just worries me that young people are getting less and less active.
This is the reason I love statistics. We've talked many times, maybe not on here, but in coaching talks, that we use statistics, we use data to confirm what we've done. We don't use data to base what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And the 68 versus 56, it's great to see that number on paper, but we already knew that. Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny that you're talking about the Gen Z here, and Gen Z is the phones. Mm-hmm. And what have I always said to kids when I see them on the phone? It's kind of like, you'll shoot your eye out, kid, when on the Christmas story. I always say it'll rot your brain.
Yeah.
Well, this is proof.
It's proof
that it'll rot your brain. Yeah. Put the phone down and go out for a run or a walk or play tennis or golf, whatever. Get out of the house, put the phone down, because it will rot your brain.
And it proves that our mental health is taking a hit.
Sure.
And it's funny because we see it in cross country, because cross country kids tend to be a little cut above, right?
Yeah.
Most of them are. And on average they definitely are. And maybe there's a reason for that connection.
Sure.
Right? So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, we have a trivia question for this week. We know that the Boston Marathon is one of the oldest races in the world. The New York Marathon is also a world marathon major, just like Boston, and has been the centerpiece in running for years. When was the first New York Marathon?
I don't know that one.
If you know the answer to that, you can send that to dean@runforgod.com. And if you're the first person to answer that question, then you will win a Run Club tumbler. So dean@runforgod.com. When was the New York Marathon first run? Interesting.
I can take a guess, and I think I would be pretty close.
You think?
I don't know the year.
Yeah. We'll see. Motivational thought of the week. We'll leave you with this. I like this. This comes from Susie Kassem, who's a writer, poet, philosopher. She said, doubt kills more dreams. Doubt kills more dreams more than failure ever will. Sometimes failure is good. Sure. Just talked about that.
Failure is often necessary.
Yeah. I can look at that race as it was a failure. I didn't meet my goals. Right. I mean, in one sense, it was a failure. But that's not going to stop me from doing it again next time. Right? Yeah. We don't fail as often as we just lose hope.
Yeah.
Because we doubt ourselves, and we got to be careful with that. We have God on our side, right? If we have enough confidence in Him, then we should be okay in every circumstance. All right. 129 episodes down.
Yeah, and if you're listening and you're not on the newrunforgod.com, go check it out. Sign up. Just give it 1 month.
Yeah.
Try for 1 month. I think you'll be blown away, and you'll be a lifelong member. So if you're not on the Run Club, if you're not a member, go check it out. There's all kinds of things that you'll love on there.
Runforgod.com. Now, until next week, may God bless every step of every run. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.